Suzanne, we've been talking about working together for a number of years, and we've had other exhibitions come through the Metal Museum. And so when she was putting together this book, it was a really great opportunity to create an exhibition that brought that book to life and something that people could enjoy. I'd also just like to say thank you to the Tacoma Arts Commission. They both have this similar, but at any rate, I think it's really impressive what you've done with Metallurge, and there's just so much happening, and I would love to see that much happening in my own community with Metalworks, and I think it's a great weekend and very impressive, so thank you for your support of this. As you all know, Suzanne is the editor of Metalsmith magazine, and I think she's done a really wonderful job innovating that magazine. She's been a great supporter. She's also an independent curator, and I think a very, very busy person. She's I think always got another project that she's doing and another book and some really wonderful ideas. She came and spoke as part of the protective ornament exhibition at the Metal Museum and provided a lot of insight and additional information about the work and the ideas that are part of protective ornament. And I would like to welcome you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And if you do need more basic info, of course, our bios are in the program, so I'm not really worried about that part of today. And I want to add my thanks to all involved in organizing this event, which seems destined in this city of destiny that we just learned to be a great event. I mean, it's very impressive. So thank you, and thank you for the opportunity of coming here and speaking about the essential subject of love and war. To set the stage, I'm giving you these three images. And I also want to say now that you'll see in my talk that all is fair in PowerPoint image collages because I've taken great liberties like, for example, Lola Brooks on the left representing love with a collection of heart brooches in her semi-autobiographical Charted Territory series. And she's wearing them, but on the right, Boris Bali's Brave necklace, neck piece made out of gun triggers. That is not Boris's body, but he's representing war for us. So I want to begin by acknowledging that in this brief talk, I've essentially taken on the whole of human civilization. I have, and it's daunting, but love and war, sex and struggle, procreation and survival pretty much define the story of humans on this planet. Unfortunately, my task is made more manageable since the discussion is limited to wearable ornament, not all of material culture. And my focus will be on contemporary examples to show how these two primary functions of seduction and defense are operating in ornament today. Now, it's significant, to me at least, that jewelry and metalwork can engage such primal, even profound aspects of culture, serving as props or trappings in these basic human pursuits. Indeed, throughout history, wearable ornament has played a crucial role in courtship and in battle and in our quest to reproduce and survive. And tattoos also have played a big role in that. So, in my own role as editor, curator, and writer, I have sought to make the case for the larger cultural potency and necessity of bodily ornament. As it happens, the very first exhibition I curated 20 years ago, Seductive Matter, and that's the announcement card for that. And my most recent exhibition, Protective Ornament, straddle these two terrains of love and war, lure and defense. These are two examples of works from the Seductive Matter exhibition. I saw this exhibition, it was curated in 1995 when I was editor of Sculpture, and I saw it as a laboratory of bodily enticement, tempting and testing our sensual aptitudes and readiness to be roused. And I referred to the works in the exhibition as erotic abstraction, in that they were sexy and titillating, but you couldn't identify them anatomically. So they were kind of abstract and yet erotic at the same time. And seduction, this is just kind of to show, establish the terrain in my own past, is the essay for the Metropolitan Museum collection of Donna Schneier. I titled that Seductive Tactics. So this is a motif, you might say, in my thinking. And then protective ornament And the related book on body and soul looks at compelling works that are designed to defend or strengthen wearers, to repel more than attract. And now, so with this lecture on All is Fair in Love and War, I get to unite these two exhibition themes. So I'll begin by laying out some cultural groundwork, and then I'll look at strategies tied to love, seduction, and courtship, followed by offensive and defensive tactics related to war. And I'll end by considering similarities in those two pursuits. And inevitably, I mean, there's a lot of extracurricular material that I'm going to give you, but I'll be tying it back to, bodily ornament. And hopefully you'll leave here with a few handy tips for both seduction and for survival. So I really do encourage you to take notes. You'll see. I learned a lot doing this. I mean, I know too much right now. I do. So don't try any tricks on me. I'm armed, okay? All right, so first we need to establish the primacy of love and war within human behavior. And to do this, we're turning to Charles Darwin. Not everybody, is into evolution, but I'm going to use Charles Darwin here for our purposes. So while most of us are familiar with Darwin's theory of natural selection, he actually posited two equally potent biological theories, natural selection and sexual selection, which I invite you to say 5 times quickly, and you'll see it's very difficult. So while natural selection is tied to survival-centered and competitive behaviors, sexual selection is tied to reproduction and courtship-centered behaviors. So along with survival of the fittest, we have survival of the sexiest, and that's my terminology, not Darwin's. So Darwin developed the second theory of sexual selection while trying to account for the evolutionary value of animal traits that seemed more like bait than as deterrents to predators, more jeopardizing than useful for survival. And so the evolution of these various conspicuous features like bright colors, large tails, and other animal accessories, if you will, only came to make sense as a means for attracting sexual partners rather than coping with predators and competitors. In The Mating Mind, How Sexual Choice Shaped the Evolution of Human Nature, Jeffrey Miller expands upon this lesser-known strain in Darwin's thought. Miller reveals how our minds evolved not just as survival machines, but as courtship machines, and helps to account, again, for those conspicuous display behaviors, such as in most art and music and, the various elaborate performances that we do. Miller proposed that our elaborate performances and opulent displays in art and philosophy and throughout culture are akin to the peacock's extravagant tail. The tail, like much artistic production, gives no advantage to survival, but when seen within the context of courtship, it's a tool to attract and entertain sexual partners, and such extroverted shows of virtuosity and splendor take on a clearer purpose. And I don't need to tell you that jewelry, along with all adornment, has a premier place to play in the rhetoric of courtship, playing a key role in the preservation of the species and part of our biological rituals of mating. That's a Heisbacher. So you see I am using examples from the field. It's Johnny Awakes from 1998. The case for evolutionary value of courtship and mating practices is also taken up by psychologist David Buss, The Evolution of Desire, Strategies of Human Mating. In this book, Buss reveals how mating is close to the heart of evolutionary processes and responsible for creating various adaptations. He also shows how successful mating requires solutions to a number of difficult adaptive problems. These include selecting a fertile mate, outcompeting same-sex rivals, fending off male poachers or mate poachers, preventing the mate from leaving, and emerging or engaging in all the necessary sexual and social behaviors required for successful conception, childbirth, and child rearing to occur. Okay, so now that we've hopefully established these two evolutionary and primal drives of sex and survival, or love and war, we can focus on all is fair in love, or modes of seduction and attraction. So the word seduce they're not showing, the root's not up there, but it's rooted in the Latin ducere, which means to lead. So like il duce, leader. It means to lead or to draw or to pull. And a ducere or duce is the same root in education, so I find that interesting. But in the dictionary definition of the verb to seduce, you see it has various meanings, but it's the third definition that interests us most. And this meaning is emphasized in the various synonyms: to tempt, attract, lure, entice, trap, mislead, deceive, etc. You'll see some of those synonyms, they're tactics really in the game of both love and war. And within the cultural experience, the dynamic of seduction encompasses a much wider range of experience than just sexual foreplay. Indeed, there is a considerable literature on the subject of seduction, both in popular and critical writings. Within the design field, the role of seduction is addressed in Donald Norman's book, Emotional Design: Why We Love or Hate Everyday Things. Norman seeks to answer the question, how can an object maintain excitement, interest, and aesthetic pleasure for a lifetime? These are questions you should all be asking yourselves too when you're making things. But his answer to this question of how to maintain excitement, et cetera, is seduction. And to elaborate on this idea, Norman turns to this article that you see from 1999 by Kozlowski and Shedroff, Understanding the Seductive Experience, which is mainly about persuasive computer technology. But there's in the third line of the kind of intro, there's the word, is it the second line? Captology. Do you see that? The practice, the growing field of captology. And I think that's kind of exciting because that's what we're talking about here, captology. Do you see that? The second, yeah, okay. Just kind of note that because I didn't even know it was a field. So they illustrate their argument about the seductive experience by using Philippe Starck's juicy salif. And according to the authors, seduction is a process involving both initial attraction and then the maintenance of a relationship. Again, like with an object, you don't want people just to have that initial, impression, attraction, fade, and then it's all over, and then, they're on to the next object. So this process of seduction, according to the authors, involves three basic steps: enticement, which is grabbing attention and making an emotional promise; relationship, so you make progress with little small fulfillments and more promises; and then fulfillment, which you fulfill promises and you end the experience memorably. So, I guess you could imagine how that plays out with the juicer. But this seductive theory aims to show, and the model, you just look at how it was, composed. There's a lot of subliminal work going on in that photo, basically. But this seductive theory aims to show how we can make users want a product and keep on using it without getting tired or bored over a period of time. Another book with an utterly unattractive cover. I think this is really one of the most unattractive covers I've ever seen. But another design book about interactive technology is Seductive Interaction Design. Stephen Anderson here tries to show how the same tactics we use to attract a mate can apply to our relations between humans and interactive devices. But he also touches on neuroscience, describing how our brains are aroused by new and unexpected discoveries within our normal routines. And surprise is going to be another element that you're going to hear in both love and war. Surprise releases dopamine, you may know, and this is a reward chemical in the brain. And so a lot of, computer games and video games and interactive technology knows how to play with your dopamine. So this is something you got to be aware of. But you do a little bit of surprise, your dopamine gets released, and it's a reward chemical, and you're kind of excited. So we get a momentary chemical high if we get some surprise. And so his theory of seduction and interactive design involves this idea of playing with, people's anxiety and delight and the levels of dopamine. And another theoretical analysis of seduction is by Jean Baudrillard, his book On Seduction. And here the French philosopher examines the power of attraction and fascination within the context of capitalism and systems of control. And for Baudrillard, seduction is more like a game or dance separate from reproduction or survival per se. It's like an extended form of cultural foreplay, which I propose is kind of like what we're all doing here, okay? We're all playing the game of cultural foreplay. That's one thought. Okay, so now you can also find considerable commentary and advice on courtship and seduction within popular culture and self-help literature. And this is where you're going to get a lot of the tips that I promised you. I'm showing a couple examples from the dozens and dozens that are out there. It's a huge field. I guess people need a lot of help in this department. So these books give advice on how to willfully cultivate a seductive manner. You know, if you don't have it naturally, well, you read up. So here are a few tips that I culled from that have a close tie into jewelry, okay? So tip number 1, keep them guessing. You know, again, this is like tied to surprise. And the descriptives underneath these headings are, you know, again, culled from these self-help pop books. So keep them guessing, surprise them, do something a little risque and unexpected. Try to cultivate a little bit of mystery. Mystery is always attractive, and the secrecy will give off a seductive aura. Whoops. 2, be playful. Oh, this is good. All right. Studies have found that a playful attitude makes people more attractive. Okay. Playfulness in males signals non-aggression, while in females it signals youth and fertility. Humor, too, is another crucial element in attractiveness. A study has found that women are more likely to give their phone number to men who use humor. So I told you, like I give you this practical advice, so beware of metalsmiths wielding humor, because their intentions may not be that pure, okay? So just like, be on guard. And then, you know, some of this is obvious, but again, when you think, I see, I'll tie it back to jewelry and ornament, you know, this is all very relevant. And 3, use body language. So don't be afraid to touch someone's shoulder, you know, or arm lightly when you're talking to them. Physical contact by men and presumably by women actually increases the temperature, the body temperature, you know, of the person you're touching, sometimes by, you know, over a degree. So these are tips, okay, you know, you can use these. So to recap these seduction tips that we'll find operant in seductive ornament, they are surprise and mystery, play and humor, touch and physicality. Okay, so from the Definitive Book of Body Language, The Hidden Meaning, you can see the title there. This book lists the 13 most common female gestures, courtship gestures and signals to show men that she could be available, okay? So again, this is useful. There are 13 common female courtship gestures. I am going to share 5 of them, which I realize, I mean, I don't know if I coined this, but I realize that they tie into jewelry behaviors. I think there is a set of jewelry behaviors that I've decided, you know, to call it. And you'll see, so here's some courtship signals. One of them is the head toss and hair flick. This photo is not from that book, it's just like a really good shot of a woman playing with her jewelry that contains a lot of these gestures. But the hair toss and hair flick, it's found, even if you don't have long hair, women will start like kind of doing this to show that they're kind of like, no, it's true, that they are concerned about their appearance, okay? Now, of course, the jewelry behavior, you know, earrings and this whole thing about, and you bare your neck, which is submissive. This is, you know, another sign. Submissive signals are part of this. So preening, exposed neck. Okay. Another sign, courtship signal, is self-touching. Okay. Yeah. Well, again, it's like that's a jewelry behavior. It's totally a jewelry behavior. Okay. Self-touching. She's self-touching. Many of you are out self-touching up here in the audience. And then this is fun. The limp wrist is tied to the exposed wrist. The limp, again, submissive, whatever. Not everybody likes these courtship signals, but you know, you've got the limp wrist and then the exposed wrist, you know, and this is very much, again, a jewelry behavior, you know, like, because your wrist, and then finally, you know, this is so obvious, but fondling a cylindrical object. It's in the book, okay? Which is actually, honestly, a great book. It's a great book. You'll see. Okay, so the wearing of jewelry almost unconsciously triggers these courtship gestures. And before we consider the best format of seductive ornament, we're going to consider one more area of courtship behavior, and this is gift giving. In the natural world, animals go to extraordinary lengths, as we know, to attract a partner and reproduce. And one of these measures is the giving of presents, and it's known as nuptial gifts. So this is, even in science, they refer to them as nuptial gifts. These are food items or inedible tokens that are transferred to females by males during courtship or copulation. Now, such gift giving seems especially profitable for males who are in poor condition, physical condition, or don't display great, physical bounty. So they can often compensate with the giving of gifts. And I mean, you can see, obviously, Tiffany, I think that's a really beautifully composed shot, by the way. And, he's like slipping it under the table and the two cups and just everything about that is like really well done. And you're seeing two examples of, flies, because many species of flies, they catch prey and bundle up to gain attention of a mate. And while the female is unwrapping or biting or eating this gift, she becomes distracted and the mate takes the opportunity to copulate. And again, it's like so appropriate because, and this is also funny because scientists are now finding that males are actually deceiving and cheating and giving their like prospective mates like really like kind of worthless or, just easy bait, but that's what's going on. So the gift serves to feed and distract while sperm transfer takes place, and this is part of this larger tactic of distract and conquer that we will see again in both love and war. And I don't need to tell you about, gift jewelry as a gift-giving, distractive or just, copulatory aid, I guess. You can, because that's it. But here, within contemporary jewelry practice, we see this impulse cleverly played out in Ted Noten's installation, appropriately set in the red light district of Amsterdam, of a vending machine dispensing affordable 3D printed rings. And it's called, as you see, Be Nice to a Girl, Buy Her a Ring. So, just playing on this just very common social practice. Okay, so within the realm of jewelry and metalsmithing, what types of objects seduce or attract a mate best? What are successful formal strategies of provocation and enticement? There's so many examples, okay? So just forgive me for choosing two here, but you're looking at Sophie Hanagar's Family Jewels on the right. You're right, and then Judy Donofrio's Temptation. So two very different aesthetics, but we've heard some of the suggestions already about seductive design and the animal world and things that we're going to apply now to jewelry, including surprise, tactility, and secrecy. But there are a few general guidelines that apply to all forms of seduction. And one essential component of all seduction is tension. So while the dynamics of seduction are not everywhere the same, it inevitably involves a degree of resistance or an unyielding element. Without tension or the play of opposites, an object or a person is lacking in interest. So this requisite tension can be created between various poles, like the soft and the hard, the smooth, the rough, subdued, bright, familiar, strange. And the beholder usually experiences this tension as a combination of attraction and repulsion. And this is where the mystery, surprise, and the unexpected often come into play. And conceptual ambiguity is also key because explicit depiction destroys an atmosphere of seduction. So as I said, you have two different aesthetics here. One's pretty riotous and colorful with dangling elements and fruit, et cetera, and the other is, monochrome but bulbous and, enticing. But they all kind of have a combo of attract and not repel, but it's a little discomfort. Now, jewelry as an art form is poised to perform a seductive role, as we said. Its wearable scale and direct contact with the human body make it ideally positioned to engage the flesh and lure a mate. In addition to resistance, there are prime factors that help foster enticing experiences, as mentioned earlier. Tactility and touch, intimacy and secrecy, and interactivity and physicality, sort of the rubbing and the prodding and the dangling and things that the object can do to your body. So touch is the key component of jewelry's power to act as an agent of seduction, or like a key, if not the key, and to provide intimate experiences. Touch has rightfully been called the mother of the senses, and much has been written about the importance of tactility for human development. Touching activates our skin, the all-encompassing organ, the outermost portion of our nervous systems. Several pieces foreground the power of touch as an activating agent and means of sensual or erotic connection. This is Rebecca Barton's Coalesce. Rebecca Barton's in the exhibition, but not with this piece, but she has 2 pieces in the protective ornament. A number of jewelers create work that foreground jewelry's implicit tactile function. In this case, these are 2 examples by Sun Kwang Kim from her 4-2 series. So, you know, it's like fusing two bodies through the jewelry itself. And I realized I better speed up a little bit. Alyssa D. Krauss, several of her works aim to titillate the wearer's skin through these through braille and other textural experiences, often that are pinned to be worn under the clothing and, you know, rub against the wearer. This is her 6 rings for urban dwellers. Each, you know, contains a different textural experience. So the wearers asked to stick their fingers into like fur or sea sponge or gum. And it turns out that Seductive Matter show I did 20 years ago, before I was editor of Metalsmith, I included her jewelry, Elisa D. Krauss's jewelry, and it was, you know, somebody thought, you know, oh, that's crazy or radical, but it just fit perfectly within that realm of the seductive. So I wasn't thinking, oh, this is jewelry and not sculpture. So rings like these tickle rings by Michelle Kramer, and then the lady ring on the right by Katrina Kosturko. They convey a basic truth that we all know, that fur is one of the most irresistible and seductive materials known to humankind, and nothing else courts the body and awakens our sense of touch this way. In Tina Rath's necklace, just white fox, with its hand-sized fur pendants, touch is not an option. According to the artist, there's something really wonderful about being able to caress yourself and wearing something that not only allows you to do that, but actually makes it impossible for you not to do that. So there's your self-touching again. And the sensual, even erotic solicitation of fur extends to the viewer as well. And Rath reports that, you know, with pieces like this, she's done a number of fur pieces. Inevitably, somebody comes up to you and says, I really have to touch that. So it is pretty irresistible. So there's, you know, put fur in your work if you want touching to occur. Another prime way that objects and people can seduce, engage, and attract us is through hidden or secret components. We've heard this secrecy is seductive, right? As a verb, intimate means to make known indirectly, to hint or suggest, rather than to fully reveal. And intimate objects, and, you know, with secretive or private parts, speak to us in an insinuating, come hither tone, instead of declaring themselves outright. And it's like, you know, a whisper that would draw one closer. So you're Diane Falkenhagen, it's dalliance, but there's a mirror inside, so you really have to kind of, you know, get in there to find the form in all its fullness. And then Keith LeBou, title is Utterance. But, you know, he constantly builds hidden elements in, and he actually reported that the best thing that ever happened to one of his works, or that anybody had said about one of his works, is after 7 years, an owner finally found this little image that he had buried in there, and she was for 7 years looking for it, but it was only, you needed that perfect alignment of everything to see it. So he's committed to that, you know, to the hidden. On the other hand, you get explicit jewelry works that declare their carnal interests outright. And so it's like wearing your sex on your sleeves, Janine Antoni's tender buttons, and Julie Harrison's cleavage. So, you know, these aren't reproductive organs, but, you know, they're related to, you know, erogenous zones. And also, in the case of Keith Lewis's orgy ring, and Carol Del Tenra, whose name I'm messing up, nymph brooches, and I'll let you identify the body part there. This type of ornament, and if you don't know, you can come and talk to me afterwards, and, and I'll tell you. Anyway, this type of ornament is, easier to read. It's like for those that don't pick up on subtle nuanced signals, like, you can like broadcast it a little more openly. Openly? Okay, openly. Yeah, okay. Okay, intermission, just for like 3 seconds. We're going to cleanse our visual palette and get ready for war strategies, because, I got to do both. I told you this is pretty encompassing. So we're shifting now to from strategies of love, courtship, and seduction to those of defense and attack, where all is fair in war. As with matters of love and seduction, the literature on war is vast. You're looking at the classic on military strategy and tactics, The Art of War, by Sun Tzu, a Chinese general and strategist from the 5th century BC. These are actual bamboo strips from the book found in 1972, of this treatise, this ancient treatise. They're, preserved on display, and then, just a published version of it more recently. This ancient treatise is composed of 13 chapters, each devoted to one aspect of warfare. Much of the text is about how to fight wars without actually engaging in battle, and how to outsmart one's opponent so as to avoid physical warfare. And this kind of non-physical altercation or strategic head games does kind of play well into jewelry, because it's not really about war. It's about, mainly playing with people's minds. Passages from The Art of War have survived through the centuries as common idioms, and Tzu's best-known maxim is all warfare is based on deception. You probably heard that before. So, and this is elaborated further in his text. So all warfare is based on deception. Hence, when we are able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must appear inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away, and when far away, we must make him believe we are near. Deception is key to courtship, but also definitely to war. And so his treatise has been applied to fields outside the military and other competitive realms like business, politics, and sports. Jumping forward a couple millennia to the early 19th century, we have Napoleon's 113 military maxims on warfare and strategy. A couple of these war tips, which are mostly about like how to maneuver your troops across mountains and things like that, but a couple of them are somewhat relevant to body ornament. Maxim number 16 is, never do what the enemy wishes you to do for this reason alone, that he desires it. And maxim number 40, fortresses are equally useful in offensive and defensive warfare. It is true they will not in themselves arrest an army, but they are an excellent means of retarding, embarrassing, weakening, and annoying the victorious enemy. And the fortress mode, like in the exhibition, there's the section called On Guard, but it's all about sort of like creating a defensive barrier between you and any potential aggressor. So fortress building. And also, within contemporary warfare, there are hundreds and hundreds of manuals and books about strategic and tactical guidelines. Here are just a couple examples. They issued by the Army, the United States Army Field Manuals. There are so many subsections, manuals for different situations. But here are a few of the official military strategies. 1, deception. A strategy that seeks to deceive, trick, or fool the enemy and create a false perception that can be leveraged for military advantage. Distraction. We saw that, distract and conquer. An attack by some of the force on one or two flanks leading up to a strong frontal attack by the rest of the force. A feint, or to pretend, to draw attention to another point of the battle where little or nothing is going on so that you can then come at it from another angle. And the decoy, confuse the enemy about the whereabouts of troops or resources. So many of these same tactics are in play in ornament and in courtship, as we've seen, and especially those that relate to one-on-one combat. Okay, so we're going to be looking in one moment at some contemporary jewelry in this war mode. But within popular culture, again, a number of self-help publications seeking to apply war strategies to everyday conflict. Robert Greene's book, The 33 Strategies of War, is billed as a comprehensive guide to the subtle social game of everyday life, informed by the most effective military principles in war. The book promises, quote, each of the 33 chapters outlines a strategy that will help you win life's wars and provides all the psychological ammunition you need to overcome patterns of failure and forever gain the upper hand. So I'm going to show you some choice strategies that relate directly to jewelry and armor and ornament, and with examples mainly from the exhibition, the current exhibition. And I'll be quoting Green's description of these different strategies, so like as I elaborate on them, it will be largely his words. One strategy is the counterbalance strategy. This is Kelly Malick Kosak. These are her urban wear rings, okay? But the counterbalance strategy. In the heat of battle, the mind tends to lose its balance. It is vital to keep your presence of mind, maintaining your mental powers, whatever the circumstances. Learn to detach yourself from the chaos of the battlefield. Now, Malick Kosak created these rings to help her survival in New York, give her confidence and a sense, that she's armed. But she wisely knew that she created a graspable element because see the bulbous bottom of these rings? That's intentionally designed so that you can grip in your fear onto something so that you will keep your presence of mind, because that seems to be like a real saving mechanism, I guess, is the grip. So here, the counterbalance strategy, as seen in contemporary ornament, building in, a grip point so that you can not panic, basically. It's literally getting a grip. The death ground strategy, again, these are from Green's book, okay? And he says right after the death ground strategy, you are your own worst enemy. Cut your ties to the past and enter unknown territory. Place yourself on death ground and create a sense of urgency and desperation. Now, these are two amulets from the exhibition. One of them, by Alyssa Franchino, is your own worst enemy amulet. And it has like affirmative phrases in it so that you can sort of like tell yourself that you're not, your own worst enemy, that you are good, you are great, you are strong. And then also by Jan Smith, Protection from Crazy Makers, it's like giving you the power to basically say no. But these fall under your death ground strategy for warfare. Deterrence strategies. The best way to fight off aggressors is to keep them from attacking you in the first place. Build up a reputation. Create a threatening presence that makes people think fighting you is not worth it. Uncertainty is sometimes better than overt threat. So we have two works here. They're in the attack mode section of the exhibition. Deborah Baxter's, brass knuckles, and Caballero Perez's handpiece that, you can wear as a pendant, and then you can just, get into action mode. So that's deterrence strategies, make people think like I'm staying away from you. The divide and conquer strategy. So this is Jennifer Trask's piece in the exhibition and Kristen Diener's piece, both using the, powerful eye. And so the divide and conquer strategy, when you attack people directly, you stiffen their resistance and make your task that much harder. There is a better way. Distract your opponent's attention to the front, with an evil eye deflector like this, and then attack them when they least expect it. So this is related to the military tactic of distraction we just heard and distract and conquer in courtship. But the evil eye is basically designed, all these evil eye ornaments that people have worn, for centuries around the world. The principle is very much to catch the eye, the other evil eye that would, look into your eyes through this deflective, distractive device of the evil eye. So that's the principle behind that. The misconception strategy, described as weave a seamless blend of fact and fiction, feed their expectations, manufacture a reality to match their desires, and they will fool themselves. Control people's perceptions of reality, and you control them. So for this, it seemed like this wrapper jewelry was in order. The ornamental trappings of hip hop, speak to this dynamic. It's ostentation. These are symbols of prosperity. The large gold chains, and the exaggerated size and abundance of precious metal in these chains, they declare the wealth and power. So, it's basically, controlling your press by having people think that you are, monetarily powerful. And, you can imagine these guys without the gold chains, and you get an absolutely different impression and signal. The ordinary, extraordinary strategy. For some reason, I keep including this piece in almost everything I write or do, because I think this is Keith Lewis's daisy chain. But under the heading, the ordinary, extraordinary strategy, where people expect your behavior to conform to known patterns and conventions. Your task as a strategist is to upset their expectations. First, do something ordinary and conventional to fix their image of you, like, wear some daisies that look like costume jewelry, around your neck. Then hit them with the extraordinary. The terror is greater for being so sudden. Well, a perfect example of the ordinary extraordinary is this necklace, because it's two-sided. One side, you get your innocuous little daisies. The other side, you have anuses, right? Photos of anuses under crystal. And this, so innocuous on one, a little disturbing on the other for some people. And depending on what side faces out, the wearer, is going to be trepidatious or not. And as Keith Lewis said, wearing this piece becomes a sort of playground dare. I mean, he knows what he's up to here. And he sees it, like in other jewelry like this, it's a challenge to all those who encounter it. And it could be disarming, certainly. Okay, we have 3 more strategies, and then we're going to do a wrap up here. Communication strategy. Communication is a form of war. Its field of battle is the resistant and defensive minds of the people you want to influence. The goal is to penetrate their defenses and occupy their minds. Learn to infiltrate their ideas behind enemy lines, sending messages through little details, luring them into coming to conclusions you desire and thinking they've gotten there all by themselves. We've already heard that, strategy in everyday life. But in this case, it's Parker Brown's Defense of Ignorance helmet that's in the exhibition. It's visorless, so one cannot see, and it's like the text along the border says, "Against logic, there is no armor like ignorance." So, I mean, this is all designed to not let anybody get past your defenses to, penetrate your brain and insert new ideas. Passive-aggressive strategy is another strategy. It's dominate while seeming to submit. Marilyn De Silva's Devil's Garden hat pins that's not in the exhibition because it's in the Oakland Museum. It's in the book. And then Amy Hamai's killer bracelet. The passive-aggressive strategy is the most effective form of aggression, is the best hidden one. Aggression behind a compliant, even loving exterior. So to follow the passive-aggressive strategy, you must seem to go along with people, offering no resistance, but actually you dominate the situation. And so this bracelet, does flare out into these blade-like almost petals. And even Marilyn describes her Devil's Garden hat pin piece as passive-aggressive. So it's designed to address that. And then finally, well, in this batch of strategy is sowing terror as a strategy. Terror is the ultimate way to paralyze people's will, to resist and to destroy their ability to plan a strategic response, just discombobulate them through panic and terror. The goal of a terror campaign is not battlefield victory, but causing maximum chaos and provoking the other side into desperate overreaction. And, it's getting harder to do that these days, but this is just 2 examples. One from the exhibition, which is Alexander Chaney's Aprilophobia with needles. And Lynn Stanionis's, I don't remember the title, but you get the idea, Stakes. I think it's called Lotus something. But so this is, everybody's terrified by something else. I mean, some people are terrified by snakes, so you got to kind of figure out what's going to get the person bent out of shape. Another mode of defensive strategy in visual appearance and ornament is camouflage. The word camouflage is from the French verb meaning makeup for the stage. And these are great brooches by Frederick Braun in that they're brooches, they're makeup, and they're camouflage. So he's just compacted, no pun intended, compacted all 3 into these really powerful, great visual accessories to my talk. So there are 2 main types of camouflage or protective coloration as found in nature and that can be applied to human behavior. As in the animal world, such disguise can be a crucial tactic of survival and increase the statistical chance of survival for the species. The first coloration strategy involves hiding or blending into the landscape. This type of protective coloration is cryptic resemblance, you see here, which involves effects that enhance the similarity of color between the animal and its surroundings, allowing the organism to remain undetected. Within a social context, I'm really happy about this image because this is sisters from the Delta 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 sorority of University of Kentucky. And they're all wearing black dresses, slight variation. Two of them have pearls, but they all three have these little pins. And so this, you can guess, would be the cryptic resemblance example in social behavior where they're all trying to blend in. I mean, they look remarkable. They look like quadruplets, but in any case. So within a social context, it's sometimes safer to wear generic or nondescript jewelry to avoid attention and to fit in. But the second type of protective coloration involves mimicry, where animals use coloration or markings to purposely contrast with their habitat in order to serve as a warning to that they have, these aggressive or disturbing toxic qualities so others won't prey on them, or as a method of communication to their members. And so on the right, you have Hisano Taki's grotesque. I mean, she calls the one on the left, you've got two examples of these gigantic felt bulbous pearls, and the one on the left is called grotesque. So she's knows exactly what she's up to here. So two examples of camouflage where you want to either disappear or stand out. Many species, such as hoverflies, have evolved mimicry as a method to deceive predators. They assume the same bright colors and advertise the defenses of wasps, but don't actually have the defenses themselves. So many birds don't eat hoverflies, for example, and humans, if we see one, it's whoa, because we think it's a wasp, and it's done a good job of fooling us. But what's really, for me, kind of funny is that, so you see the two examples and how similar they are in terms of mimicry, but the bottom image is of a wasp eating a hoverfly. So it's almost like he's taken him down, okay, and he's very, very upset. Within contemporary jewelry, an example by Dan Jost, his Pop Daddy Ruff, where you can basically assume the guise of a wasp if you're a hoverfly. You just choose your ornament carefully, basically. All right, we're going to look at a couple more shared tactics in our pursuits to lure and repel, and these are shared, and this is kind of leading up to the conclusion here. The strategies to have success in both spheres involve similar means, including, as we've seen, conspicuous display, deception, and some form of entrapment. These are two brooches by Bettina Dittelmann. The anthropologist Alfred Gell theorized about the role of intricate patterns within culture and the ways that they serve to bind and captivate onlookers. Gell saw that the cultivation and deployment of impenetrable patterns in cultures, he saw it as a part of what he called the technology of enchantment. Things that are designed to attach people to objects and each other. It's it's purposeful. For Gell, such captivation or fascination ensues from the spectator being trapped within a work that is essentially indecipherable. So there's a mental stickiness due to the blockage of cognitive process. So it's a mind game, basically. You give somebody a very complex pattern, they start looking at it, they get trapped, their mind kind of is stupefied, basically. So you're unable to decipher the composition, you become disarmed. So you become a victim in psychological warfare. To quote, and so here are two other examples of sort of entanglements or traps, visual traps, Giovanni Corvaya and Sharon Portulance, tangled visual traps. So to quote Gell on this dynamic, he said, I've identified as the essential property of surface decoration its cognitive resistance, back to resistance and seduction. The fact that once one submits to the allure of the pattern, one is liable to become hooked or stuck in it. And he goes on to say the fact that the word tacky is used to condemn the popular taste for riotous ornament and other lapses of taste, is revealing itself, tacky, sticky, or kind of overdone, but it captures you. Okay, so his analysis of the technology of enchantment extends to warfare and some of the patterns on prows of ships and so forth. But this notion of the ornament as obstacle or sticking point, a web in which we become enmeshed, is a very fruitful framework, I think, for considerations of jewelry and bodily ornament. Then some terms like trappings, as well as certain terms that we use for jewelry, share similar terminology like captivating, alluring, charming, transfixing. So this is an essential dynamic that is being played out in a lot of the jewelry that we wear. All right. And here comes the conclusion. So it's David Atkins' Discretionary Alliance, the mousetrap. It comes with earrings, matching earrings. And this is, fish lure with hook brooch, obviously, over here. So jewelry by its very nature, or ornament, is an attractive device designed to be conspicuous, going back to the beginning, and call attention to itself and the wearer. All ornament, certainly the seductive and defensive form, seeks to capture and disarm the beholder. Before disarmament and entrapment, either in the name of passion or protection, one needs bait, or the visual snare, or dare I say, the snag of one's attention. Because that's, for me, snag has always meant that, to snag somebody's attention. So I think it's a great name, actually. So this is where craftsmanship comes in, to build a compelling bait or lure or a better ornamental mousetrap. Success in survival and in protection requires cunning and craftiness in the best sense of the word. And with well-crafted and captivating bodily ornament, we will be better equipped to succeed, fairly or not, in both love and war. Good luck, all of you out there, and thank you very much.